Hey everybody, it's Larry with Hobby Progress, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of painting on my Tyranid Zoanthropes. I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of the stuff that I'm putting on them. As you can see, they're primed already. Did that a little bit ago. Um, just going to go over, I prime them with Vallejo Gray Surface Primer. I go back and forth between the gray and the black, but we're doing gray right now because that's the one I own. Um, Doing all of the carapace in Army Painter Matte Black. I use Army Painter Matte Black simply because that's the one I own. I also use Abaddon Black from GW quite a bit, or just Vallejo's Black. I'm doing the main skin and body bits in a Deathworld Forest, so get a nice matte green on them. And then I'm doing the brain cavity in the back in a moot green. And then I'm doing all of the little vents on the back here, as well as the claws and the tail bit, and probably the teeth and jaw bit here, in a screaming skull. Turns out to be a really cool bone color. And then I plan on going back over a lot of the brain cavity and body with Bale-Tan Green wash, because that comes out pretty cool. And then do a lot of accents in Nurgle's Rot, because I want the brain cavity and body of these to look slimy. So yeah, that's the color scheme I'm going with. That's the color scheme I do on all my Tyranids. But my Zoanthropes are getting a big splash of this moot green, which is something I don't usually do. My Tyranids are very insect looking. I try to keep them darker colors with the black and the Deathworld Forest. I think it looks more natural. I really do enjoy it. So now that I've got them primed, going to start with the Deathworld Forest and get the body parts done. As a side note, I don't like to paint out of the pot. I think it dries out too fast and ruins a whole pot of paint, and it's unnecessary. So I use GW's little texture paint tool to scoop it out of the lid of the pot and into the palette. I just bought a ceramic one, cheap ceramic one off Amazon for like, I don't know, $4. And I just scoop out a little bit of a time until I get, because when you're priming, a little goes a long way. Well, not priming, base coating. And honestly, with the Deathworld Forest, I think there's a lot to be gained from using black primer, because you can put your Deathworld Forest coat a lot thinner and still get good coverage on your first coat. And then you don't have to go back over a second time. I'm a big fan of not having to go back over it a second time, because it irks me to have to repaint the same model multiple times. And if you can get the same effect in one coat without caking paint on, why not, right? It's easy. Saves time. But you don't always get that option. Sometimes you got to go back and touch up. But you're almost always going to have to go back and touch up a model, regardless, because It's a three-dimensional object, and you have to hold it, a million different ways to get the paint on it, so you're going to miss bits. But if you watched any of my other video when I was priming my Tyranid, you saw me just kind of willy-nilly throwing paint everywhere. Yeah, that's basically how I do this too. It's not the cleanest process, and some people, freaking lose their minds because it's like, oh, he's just throwing paint on everything. I don't care. It's my process. It works for me. If you don't like my process, don't watch my videos. You're probably not anyway. Although, I did notice the other day that people are watching some of my videos, probably because I told my friends about it, and they're pity watching. You know what? I thank you for your pity watching. I am okay with pity watching. Of course, it's not like I'm making money at this or anything. YouTube is never going to pay me to put videos on their site. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they get an email and like, hey, you're taking up server space, stop posting your stupid videos. That would not surprise me in the least. But if people are allowed to post 1,000 silly cat videos, I figure my silly painting videos can't actually be damaging the internet that much, right? So, this takes some time. It's a process. Get in here, really paint in all the little bits. I use a relatively large brush to do this, but it's also pretty small because, I say relatively small. It's camera's over here. It's relatively small for base coating. It's a lot smaller than the brush I was using to prime with, but primer really does go just everywhere. You want literally the entire model primed. But I don't necessarily want this color absolutely everywhere. Especially with these Zoanthropes. This green is not going everywhere. So it would actually be detrimental for me to just throw paint on it. But it still goes in a majority of places. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't even say a majority of places on this mini. I don't think it does go a majority of places on a Zoanthrope. I'm actually kind of looking at this sucker and going, man, most of my Tyranids are pretty green. These Zoanthropes are going to have a lot of black on them. That is something I generally try to avoid, is throwing a lot of black on a mini, because it's just so dark and you lose so much detail when you go black. And it's a real bummer to have these beautiful minis that GW does with all the cool sculpting and everything, and then just lay black paint on it. It's like, oh my goodness, all that detail lost. Don't get me wrong, I like black. My very first Space Marine chapter was black. Custom chapter, not a Codex chapter, so doesn't matter. But my Tyranids are also custom Hive Fleet. They are not. They're not a Codex Hive Fleet. So I do that with a lot of my stuff. Um, I don't particularly care for taking armies out of the book. Because I feel like you're gonna go to a tournament or go to your store, and then someone else is going to have the exact same army as you. You know, maybe not every single mini that you are playing, you know, but someone's playing your chapter or someone's playing your hive fleet. You know, all your colors and a lot of your minis because, well, I mean, let's face it, when something's good, everyone's playing it. But yeah, so someone's gonna have pretty much the exact same stuff you are, and all the same colors, and it's like, that's annoying and boring. You don't feel original at all. This game's supposed to have a little originality to it, you know. So it just, I don't know, it just makes sense to me to, you know, in a sci-fi game where there's millions of worlds and hundreds of billions of people, to have some diversity in there, for heaven's sakes. Anyway, so got green on my guy here. Now, we're going to take my Zoanthrope. And normally, what I would do is I paint a whole squad at a time, right? Because it's faster to batch paint. So, you know, I've got a whole squad of 6 Zoanthropes, 5 Zoanthropes and a Neurothrope to paint. But, you know, for the purposes of, you know, this video, I'm just going to paint the one, and then I'll batch paint the rest of them. And maybe post a picture of the finished progress later. But don't get your hopes up, because, yeah. So, I've got that done with the green. I am now going to attack the black, because I think that's the next deepest layer, especially around the collar, that's going to give me trouble. So, with painting, I always paint from the inside out. Go for the deepest color, the color you want over, and then paint up to the top color. So it looks like the last color I'm going to do is the brain cavity, and then I will probably, or the bone colors, and I'll probably have to come back and touch some stuff up. But touching up black is easy. Because black covers over everything. Unless you're painting, you know. Well, no, black covers over everything. There's no need to addendum that. Alright, so let us lay some black on this sucker. Now, one thing I've noticed with black is it's easy to get carried away and put it on so thick because it absorbs detail anyway. So, you know, be careful. And this is the other reason I enjoy priming black. Because when you're trying to cover over gray primer with black, it's not that it shows through, but it if you miss a spot, it's glaring. Or if like there's a frustrating spot that you just can't reach with a brush, but it's easy to see. Like, I don't paint what you can't see. I'm not one of those people that's like painting inside of a rhino or whatever, because you can't see it. But sometimes there are places that a brush just doesn't like to reach, but you can clearly see, and that's really annoying. So priming black allows you to ignore more of those spots because it's already black, so it's harder to see. But I've been priming gray. Again, because I bought my bottle of gray for a different army, actually. Okay, here. Yeah, you're probably not going to be able to see it. But right here, on this part that I'm painting right now, on the back of the tail, there's armor plates that overlap, and I'm having a really hell of a bad time getting paint on that without getting it all over the green that I just painted. Really should have primed these suckers black. I'm going to have to go and touch up my green. Quite a bit, actually, because I just really messed that part up. Anyway. In one of my other videos, I believe I talked to you about priming on the sprue. Spray priming on the sprue. That's the other thing I used to do. Just spray paint the whole thing black. Every single one of my old armies was spray primed black on the sprue, you know. Even my Eldar were spray primed black on the sprue, and they were bright colors. I mean, I had them in metallic purples, golds, silvers, bronzes. They were still spray primed black on the sprue. So, you know. But with enough little coats of paint, you don't lose detail, or much detail at all, by bringing the colors back up if you're using good quality paint. I don't think. You know. Don't throw your brushes. That is a huge cause of having to touch things up, is when you fling your brush at your model. Paint goes everywhere. You know, it's bad. It's bad stuff. You don't want to do that. I don't know how many of my shirts have paint like all over the chest of them. Because I've been painting like this, and then just you touch yourself with it. It's like, come on. You know, what am I, a friggin' little kid finger painting? Sometimes it feels that way. I mean, sometimes it feels like I am slinging paint, and that is as accurate as I can get. Anyway, I do like this Army Painter Flat Black a little bit better than I like the Abaddon Black from Citadel, because when it dries really flat, and I just feel it has a more organic feel than Abaddon Black does. Now, I have been toying with the idea, and I actually bought a bottle of Vallejo matte varnish, and using it over the Abaddon Black to see if it brings it down and dulls it a little bit. Plus, the matte does seem to show a little bit more detail, especially if you try to throw a wash over the top of it. I mean, it's hard to wash black, but you can also, I'm also playing with the idea of coming over it with like some highlighting, and highlighting my black with a really dark blue to give it a good look, because even the black carapace has nicks and chips out of it because GW does cool models. And, you know, when you always see in the magazines and the stuff, where they paint like this carapace is all in bone, and you can see all the cool character because, well, it's a lighter color. It's all white and bone colored rather than really straight up dark black. But like I said, I like my stuff to look as organic as possible, and I think the black just is a natural look. Although I did talk to a friend the other day about like a beetle carapace look, right? So getting like pearls and doing like a blue and black pearl carapace colors. So like a beetle shell. But I think that goes above and beyond my painting capability in like a big way. But he's got this, the Sigmar, the Everqueen. Dang, I can't remember the model's whole name. Again, not a huge Sigmar player. I do play Stormcast Eternals, but I'm not up on the Sigmar lore. Either way, but it's the, I think it's Elf. Yeah, I think it's Elf God that's riding this freaking giant beetle. Either way, that's what got him and me talking about beetle carapace and doing like a purple, blue, black pearl color on something. I was like, that would be super cool to do on all my Tyranids, you know, make them all look, pearl. But holy crap, you get into the logistics of actually doing that, and it's insane. Forgot the whole side of all these little spines. See what I'm saying? You're going to have to go back up and touch everything up. Because you forget things. Well, you don't forget them. You just miss them. It's like, I wasn't even looking at that. Where did all that gray primer come from? Come from you not paying attention, dummy. Either way. Touch this up here a little bit more. Yeah. Starting to come together. Now I'll do this big head crest here. Yeah, you notice I paint with my tongue out? It's a bad habit. Well, it's not, not really a bad habit. It's a bad habit to when you're painting in public and people are watching you, or painting on videos and people are watching you. Because, you're sticking your tongue out at people. And people are probably like, why the hell is he sticking his tongue out at me? What did I do? It's just it's like a nervous habit of trying to be precise. I like bite into my tongue or whatever, stick my tongue out. I don't know. It's also saying that not holding your tongue just right when you can't get something to work out. Maybe I'm the only one that has heard that, but I don't know. My folks used to say it all the time, so we all pick up our phrasing. But, yeah, so if I'm sticking my tongue out at you, just ignore it. Because I'm trying to not spew paint everywhere, probably, when I'm doing it. Not that my painting is all that precise in the first place, but still. You're probably not watching this for painting tutorials anyway. Goodness. This head crest is huge. Like, giant friggin' brain cavity on these things. It's ridiculous. But, I mean, Zoanthropes are friggin' fantastic. I mean, you take them on the battlefield, you're getting, your smite, which is, your main power that you're bringing with them. Friggin' D3 mortal wounds. So that's good. Then if you've got 4 or more Zoanthropes, your smite is increased to 2d3 mortal wounds, which is pretty nice. And if you have 6 Zoanthropes, your smite is increased to D3 plus 3 mortal wounds, which is really freaking good. Which is why I run them in squads of 6. And then if you run a Neurothrope, he can also smite. So that's a bonus. And if he kills something, he can heal Zoanthropes. And healing your Zoanthropes is friggin' fantastic because they are little tanks in their own right. Friggin' 3-up invulnerable saves with their psychic shield. So they take a lot of firepower to bring down. Which is why I'm still planning on loading this squad of Zoanthropes into that Tyrannocyte that you saw me prime in another video and dropping it in people's face, because you can't ignore a Zoanthrope unit that is right up on you, dealing D3 plus 3 smites. Oh, God forbid you roll an 11 or a 12, and then it's rolling D6 plus 3 smites. Whew, that's a lot of smite. That is a lot of smite. Mortal wounds everywhere. If we've learned anything in 8th edition, mortal wounds is how you get work done. But yeah, drop that squad of Zoanthropes up in your face and watch them go to town. Yeah, they're going to get shot down, but how much fire is going to have to get directed at that squad of Zoanthropes before it's fully brought down? A lot of fire, I'm hoping. It's going to take glass cannons and battle cannons and bright lances and rockets and all kinds of high AP stuff that would be shooting at other things focused on my Zoanthropes. Although, honestly, if your opponent's doing the smart thing and he's doing the math in his head, he's not using his high AP stuff. He's probably focusing out heavy bolters and las guns and stuff, because it's an invul save, so your high AP stuff is really worthless against it. Where mass fire is really how you take stuff like this down. Of course, geez, I've noticed in 8th edition that quantity over quality is often the route taken. So, give that one a final look over here. Make sure I didn't miss any glaring bits. Okay, so see, we've got the black on there. A big head front and black. Yeah. Looking good. So, now that I've got all the black carapace done, I'm going to get that brain cavity done, just because I want to see how that looks in the bright green. And then we'll go back and get bone on all the claws and those spines on the back. Oh, I forgot to mention, and I didn't pull it out. I also use just Nuln Oil to wash out the Deathworld Forest, too. It helps bring up all the little joints and pops. And I'll even lightly Nuln Oil the bone bits. It gives them an oily sheen a little bit, without being shiny, and brings out all the little holes and stuff in the bone pieces. All right, so now we're going to take the Moot Green, which is just a really awesomely bright green. I bought Moot Green in the first place, not for my Tyranids. I bought it for my Wood Elf Blood Bowl team, because they're in white and green and gold as their main colors. And it's super bright and very flashy and very elf to have, you know, this bright green everywhere. Okay. So this brain cavity shouldn't take a lot of paint. Because this green should go quite a long ways. Although this brain has a lot of texture, so I don't know. Okay, now that I'm looking at this, the brain is I'm gonna have to do like a weird little fade, which I don't like doing because I suck at it. Because the closer to the jaw and face you get, it turns from brain back into skin, all in like a fluid patch. And so I don't want the green to go all the way down to the face, so I'm going to have to get the Deathworld Forest back out and do that. Turns out I'm going to have to get the black back out, because I missed some spots up here towards the top of the head, forehead carapace. Feel like you guys are rushing me here. I can feel your eyes watching me. No, I'm just distracted. And this is how I always paint. Because when I'm not at home, like I am now, talking to you and painting, I usually paint at the shop. And when I'm at the shop painting, I'm usually talking to people as well. In fact, I used to think, oh man, I get so much more work done here at the shop because I can paint, and talk with people. And I do when I actually sit down and paint at the shop. But it turns out that if you're up there and you have your minis sitting out, people are like, hey, you want to get a pickup game in? Or, hey, I got a tournament list, for the tournament coming up next week. You mind giving me a trial run on it? And so you're like, yeah, sure, I'll play you. And you end up playing, and you get no painting done. But, in all honesty, I would rather play than paint. Even though I spend much more time in this hobby talking about it than I do actually playing it. But I think that's true about most hobbies. You spend much more time dreaming about it and talking about it than you actually do doing it, than you actually spend doing it. But, I mean, that's just life. I don't have a job that requires me to do a lot of in-depth thinking. It's pretty mind-numbing work. So I listen to a lot of Warhammer audiobooks while I do it. I'm actually listening through the Horus Heresy currently right now. Those are great audiobooks. I had read a lot of it already in actual book, but I cannot read actual books at work. I must listen. So, I've been doing a lot of that. So, that's how I get my Warhammer fix on a daily basis. It's via that. Yeah, so that green is going to come out super cool. Do a little bit more here. Actually going to bring that down. You know what? I said I was going to have to bring that fade down, but I'm going to play with, because that Deathworld Forest will cover it, I'm going to play with bringing that green a lot further down than I had originally thought, and see how it looks. And then that Deathworld Forest should, or well, will, I don't say should, it will cover it over if it turns out I need it to. So I'm going to bring this green all the way down to the face here and see if it looks like it's going to work, or if I'm going to have to paint over it. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Whew. All right, so got that done. All right, now let's see if you can see this at all. Okay, see, got the green brain back there. It's pretty bright green. Really looks good, I think. Especially with all that black, especially all the way up the back there and then the forehead. All that black kind of darks it out, but green really brings the color up. It's really cool, I think. And that's all that matters. What I think. I think I've said it before, but when you're painting any mini, that is truly what's important. When you're picking colors and when you're doing all that, paint what you like. You know what? That's the best thing. Because if you don't enjoy doing it, you're not going to do it. And you'll never have a painted army. I mean, if you're in it purely for gameplay and you don't want to paint an army, well, that's all well and good. But a lot of tournaments do have painting requirements. So, if you're going to play in a serious tournament, setting, you're going to need to at least learn how to paint a little bit. I mean, geez, if you're watching me, I'm not that great a painter. My minis don't come out showcase quality. They are very much table quality minis. But if you have an entire army of table quality minis painted, it actually looks pretty dang good on the table. Because you don't even want to play with your showcase quality minis. I have showcase quality minis. I paid for them. I have them commission painted. You've heard me talk about my custodian guard. My custodians are showcase quality. But I don't touch them. I wanted them showcase quality. So I buy them, and I take them out of the box, I ogle them, and then box them back up and send them to my painter. He paints them and gives them back to me. And then they end up at my local game store in a glass case. I pull them out every once in a while to play them. But anyway, the moral of this point is that you don't have to be a good painter to have a good looking army. You can be a pretty danged mediocre painter, and if your whole army's painted, you're still heads and tails above most people. Heck, in my local area, I have seen armies win painting competitions or painting awards at a tournament simply because they were the only one that showed up with a fully painted army. So, that says something right there. But in my local area, we have a lot of new gamers. And then a lot of people that are playing multiple armies or different armies than they used to play back in the older editions. So lots and lots of brand new miniatures. So it's, lots of armies in progress. So unpainted's not necessarily just a lack of will. It's just, it takes time to get painted minis. And that's the other thing I gripe about is, people say, oh, Games Workshop and Warhammer is expensive to get into. Hey, I griped about it a little bit ago. But by the time you break down the amount of time that you spend assembling and painting these minis, you're really not spending all that much money on it. And like any good hobby, you just don't add up the cost. Don't do that to yourself. Because it's always bad. Okay, got all his little claws painted. this bone color, this Screaming Skull from Citadel, is honestly not my favorite paint. It works really well for bone. It's got the color that I like. But as far as paint quality goes, I dislike it. It's partially because it's a light color, and so you get really crap coverage on it. And I've already stated that I hate going over minis more than once, because it's just a ginormous time suck. But you really pretty much have to with this Screaming Skull to get quality out of it, because it doesn't cover well because it's such a light color, and it has a tendency of caking up really bad if you try to put it on too thick. And not necessarily even just trying to put it on too thick. It tends to cake up just in general. Like, it dries really quick. Although I find that to be a problem with all Citadel paints, is they dry really quick, which is why you don't paint out of the pot. You will dry up your paints, so fast. Doing it that way. Hell, even Games Workshop's, painters, don't do that. They show you bringing them out of the pot. Oh, for suck. I just got Screaming Skull on my black carapace. So I'm gonna... Yeah, oh my god. I got Screaming Skull all over that carapace. It's fine. Like I said, black could cover up a little bit of Screaming Skull. Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. Do need to try to be a little more careful, because I'd rather not have to repaint all of that carapace. Again, still not using my most detailed brush on this miniature, because I'm still painting relatively big big pieces. I'm not really doing any fine detail work. So I'm using the same brush that I've been using this entire project, where on this bone I probably should have dropped down a brush size. I have a smaller brush sitting in front of me, ready to use. I pulled it out before we got started here. For that very reason. Because I was like, oh, I'm going to have, some little work to do. I'm about to use it here. Because actually, I'm probably not. Because when I come up here and do the teeth, I'm going to want to use that little brush. Actually, I am going to use it. To do the teeth. And I'm thinking that little sucker right there. No, that's going to need to go in black. like the carapace. I don't know. Let's try it. Black covers over everything. Oh no, that looks terrible. It looks like he's got some kind of like horn fang thing. Oh no. I don't think that's going to look good at all. I'm going to have to come over and paint that again with black. That looks terrible. Anyway. Alright, so. Got the bone on. Give you a little preview here. So see, got bone on those back pieces. So I got my green on, got my bone on. Now, this is something I haven't done yet. I've never used this BL10 green on this bright green before. So I'm betting it's going to look good. But I don't know. So, here, let's paint test to see. This I am going to paint out of the pot a little bit, simply because I don't think I'm going to use enough of this BL10 green to make a difference. Okay, it doesn't go nearly as far as I thought it was going to. So, plus wash, I don't think I'm going to have as big an issue drying out. Now, all my washes I've used to date have been out of dropper bottles. And you don't have to worry about dropper bottles drying out on you. Oh yeah. Definitely getting the desired effect out of this BL10 green. You have to put it on quite heavy. But it takes the very flat, bright but flat color of the moot green and gives it all of the texture that you'd expect the brain piece to have. But damn if you don't have to put it on heavy. Okay, I'm going to let that dry before I mess with it too much more. And I seriously doubt my video quality is going to be good enough to show it to you. I will try to maybe post some pictures, maybe make a little slideshow or something. Again, no promises because I'm not very snazzy with that. But, alright, that looks pretty dang good. Alright, so I am going to try to dig out my Nuln Oil. Agrax Earthshade, that's not Nuln Oil. That's not Nuln Oil. Well, maybe I don't have Nuln Oil left. I do have Agrax Earthshade, that's close. Oh, well, this will work. I've used this before. I used this before I started using Nuln Oil. It's Army Painter Strong Tone ink It's basically Army Painter's Gnome Oil. Works out really well. What did I do with my brush? So all of the dark green and bone bits are going to get this strong tone thrown on them. And it just adds a dark, oily tone to all the crevices. You know, does what gnome oil does. Liquid talent. I can afford to put it on a little thicker up here towards the top at the base of the brain, because those are really dark areas anyway. But I'm going to try to be more careful around the arm sections, because I don't want to obscure all the detail stuff. But I still want to pop out all the detail stuff. And I'll try to show you as well what it does to the bone, because it does some really cool stuff to the bone. I'm not going to be able to do all the bone because, like I said, I gotta go back and retouch some of that. I forgot to do that tail section in bone. I'm not actually sure I'm going to go back and do that tail section in bone. It actually kind of looks pretty cool in green. May just leave that alone. One thing I've noticed, especially on like these snake-like bodies, I had an issue with my one of my trigons when I was shading it. I was like, you don't have to worry about brush strokes in your wash if you put it on heavy enough, which I like to on this Death World Forest. Yes, you can. You can see brush strokes, so do be careful. You can't just freaking slather it on. I mean, you almost can. You really, seriously, almost can just slather it on. It's almost, you know, I've seen people dip things. Oh my god, that would be terrible. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Maybe terrain. I could probably see myself doing it to some terrain bits. But dipping's a little harsh. Yeah, Tyranids just look so much better once you get this tone on them. But you do have to put it on relatively heavy. Okay, here we go. See if this affects this good enough, or if I'm going to have to repaint it. Probably talked way too quiet there for you to hear me. But I may have to repaint the front of his face because I really don't like the way that chin thing came out. He's got like this spike on his chin, and it just looks terrible painted up in that bone. Thought it might look cool, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. Looks awful. But almost got this mini done. Almost. And one thing I'm still playing with, because I'm still a relatively amateur painter, as you can tell, because I'm still enamored with washes and stuff. I don't seal my minis. I never have. I guess I figure like I'm not hard on them enough to need to seal them. I don't know. It's just it's not something I do. It's probably something I should do. I just don't. I don't know. Uh, okay. So, as far as the actual mini itself, let me see if I can show you a little bit. I put way too much of that ink into that pot. Or into that... don't do that. Anyway. Let me show you what we've kind of done here. See, you can tell... Oh, no, you can't. Let me see if I can put him like right there, and then like, is there a way you can focus it? No. It tries, but you can't. But you can kind of tell it's got it like a more oily color to it. Let me see if I turn this light on. Yes, video testing. Oh, you can't see anything at all. The glare is just terrible. Okay, I don't know, you can kind of see it, but it looks pretty good. I think. The last thing that I'm going to end up doing is, like I said, I got to go back over and retouch up some of my mistakes. Where I overpainted on some stuff, and then I do the base, the actual base itself, in Sterling mud. The Citadel Sterling mud. So all my Tyranids are going on mud. Except for some of my Gene Stealers. Some of my Gene Stealers I do in not Armageddon Dust. The Astro Granite Debris. The gray one. Whatever that is. Yeah, Astro Granite Debris. I do some of those in the Astro Granite Debris because I want them to look like sewer grates. I told you I was going to put Nurgle's Rot on him. And I probably will. I'll probably do Nurgle's Rot around the mouth and around the brain cavity. But until that wash dries, I really don't want to put Nurgle's Rot on. Because Nurgle's Rot's like the last thing I put on. Alright guys, this video is right at an hour. So, yeah. I need to call it quits probably for the night because you guys are done watching my video. But so, about an hour in, paint one of those. Should be able to have a Zoanthrope army together, or Zoanthrope squad together before you know it. So, again, this is Larry for Hobby Time. Or Hobby Progress, not Hobby Time. That's somebody else's channel, probably. But this is Larry for Hobby Progress. Thanks for joining me and watching me paint my Zoanthrope. Have a good night.